Well, good morning, everybody. This morning here, it's a nice day. It's dry. September feels like October, or October feels like September. So today I'm going to just take the very last of the decent runner beans that I can find. And there's a few in here, not too many, but there are plenty of these really big, well-developed seeds. So I think we might be using those for some stews as well. But as you can probably see, there's quite a lot of browning leaves and there's quite a lot of gaps forming. And that's a sure enough sign for me that it's time to strip this down. And it's a long job and I don't particularly like it, but it's one that's got to be done. And it changes what the whole plot looks like, I find, when I take this large structure down. So I'm gonna just sort through, see what I can find, and then get on with it. Well, really just a handful of beans that we can eat, and they're just smaller ones and they were still tender. And there are literally shed loads of the beans that we can either keep for seed or pod and use for stews. And there are an awful lot left on the plant, and it's probably the first year for a very long time that we've had so many excess beans, but it really has been a very prolific season. So I'll get these over to one side and then we'll start thinking about taking these beans down. Well, all of a sudden the weather's come in a bit. It's got a bit overcast. So I think I might do this podding at home a little bit later on, because I do want to make the best of the dry morning. So I'll just take these last few and pop them in this little container, and then I think I'll get on with removing the foliage from the rest of the beans. And these beans have been, well, varying sizes, and there's some really nice big beans in there, and they tend to come from the greener pods, I've noticed. So as I'm taking them down, if I find any of these bigger pods that have got a green coloration, then I'll certainly put them to one side and perhaps swap them out for the lighter green ones, because that'll give us more bean for the effort. Right, a couple of nice big ones there, which I'll put in the drying rack, and that should keep us going for a meal for today. Well, it always amazes me how out of those tiny seeds comes so much foliage, and this will go onto the compost heap and make great compost in good time. So this year I've decided I'm going to keep these up, and therefore my method of taking it apart, i.e. taking the bean off, is got to be a bit different, because normally I up the cane and then run my hand down the cane and it takes everything off. But this year, of course, if they're going to stay in place, I've got to find a way of getting them off the cane without doing that. So I'm going to do another layer of pulling everything off, and then we'll get the roots up, I think, and see what we've got left. Well, I think you'd call this moment cathartic. It's always a bit of a pleasure to clear out the old and get ready for the new. And I'll just gather up all these loose leaves and make sure that any weeds that I've got around the bases are out. And many people would say you can keep your beans in for longer because they add goodness to the soil and they fixate nitrogen. Well, that's true, but I'm afraid my unofficial OCD won't allow me to do that. I need to get it cleaned up and looking good for next year. So I'm going to work my way around and get up all this loose leaf and then do a little bit of weeding, and well, I'll take a look then. Well, that got the heart pumping, but wow, what a difference. Isn't it amazing? That feels like a season over to me when the bean canes are down or bare. That's come up pretty good. And this will probably be one of the first areas that I put some fresh compost on, because I want to get that regenerated and rejuvenated, ready for next season. And it's looking pretty good. Certainly nice to see all the leeks from both sides. I noticed this morning a few of those that had bolted are really going for it. I need to just get rid of those. They won't come to anything. It's a bit of a danger taking their tops off like this, because you might pull them thinking they're okay and they're not. But I just leave enough to see that there's a core inside. Right. That will be me done for this morning, and hopefully we'll get a bit of brighter weather later in the day. I might just manage to get back out again. Well, I was just about to go for coffee and I noticed this yellow flower on the top, and that means this one really has gone to seed, and the others, as you can see, are a very different shape and don't have all these small leaves. So I'm going to pull this one. This is more than enough for our needs throughout the winter. And what I'll end up doing is just taking these really fresh young leaves, and we'll have those for tea. And the rest will go to the chickens. And one of my silkies in particular really likes this. So this bush, as it is now, will keep her going for a couple of days and she'll have a great time eating it. And there's one other plant that seems to have flowered really late. In fact, it's a flower that I've never seen before. I'll just pull this off. I'll take you up and show you. Right, I think that's enough for us. I'll take this one to the silkies. Right, here we go. So it's right up on the top of the plot, and this plant has been somewhat different this year to normal years, and this is the Jerusalem artichoke, and as you can see, it's got rather attractive flower on it, a bit like a sunflower. And these really tall stems are something I've not experienced before. I suppose there is an outside chance that that is in fact a sunflower and not the Jerusalem artichoke. I'll only really know when I take it out, or maybe you know, and if you do, just write in the comments what your experience has been, and then that'll give me a bit of insight. But it is unusual. It doesn't look like a fully fledged sunflower, but maybe if you've got a Jerusalem artichoke and you've grown it with those sort of large stems. Maybe you get a flower and you can tell me what your experience is. Well, in my last video, when I was clearing my compost bins, many of you commented that this in fact is bindweed and not couch grass. And of course you're right. When I get into the swing of things, the words sometimes get a bit mixed up, but you can see down here how the roots will be inside this compost, and it will take me some time to sift them out, but it's a job that I'm used to, so not too bad. Right, let's see what else needs doing around the plot. Well, the clearing out that I did on this bed has been semi-successful. You can see the few sprouts that are left. I really don't think we're going to get a crop off of those this year. Maybe sprout tops, but they really are overrun and have been, well, just the style has been cramped by all that couch grass that's come in from the side, and you can see it starting to come back in again. And this bed, which I haven't tackled yet because I keep putting it off, is exactly the same. And this celeriac, I suspect, will not do particularly well because of it. So I've got a job on to clear this bed out, and I've had a few suggestions as to what to do here, but it's really difficult because I've covered this up before, and unfortunately 2 years on, and took the cover off and there was still couch grass underneath, looking really healthy. So I don't know, jury's out. I maybe put potatoes in there this year. I haven't put potatoes in the ground for a long time, but maybe that will be the answer, just to break it up and try and compete with the weed. We'll see. I'd be the first to say that my celeriac hasn't been great this season. These are my best celeriac plants, and they just got to the point where this net needs to come off. I don't think there's a lot more growth in them now, and there's some fair sized roots on them, but I planted them quite wide apart in the hope that I would get some fairly big, well, celeriac to eat, and it just hasn't happened, and I don't know quite why. I'm gonna take this net off now then and strip through the bottom leaves and try and see what we've got, but I'm not particularly hopeful. If I take this first one and just remove these lower leaves, you get an idea of what we're looking at, which is fair but not tremendous. So I don't think we're going to have an awful lot of celeriac to eat this year, but we'll have some. Right, I'm going to work my way through the bed. There you go, that reveals the truth of how the celeriac season has been, and you can see that the roots, they're okay. There's one or two that are quite nice. These two are quite nice size and they'll make a good meal. But if you've grown celeriac this year and you're thinking it's not particularly productive, then I'd say don't give up. See if you like the taste. And this year has been, I would call, unusual in terms of how productive they've been. And you can see I had really good spacing between these, but still I didn't get an awfully large crop. And this one in here, you can see what happens if you don't have a single plant. You get two that try and compete with each other and they're not really going to come to anything. So there we are, that's the celeriac season. Some you win, some you lose, and I think this year on balance it's not been great, but we'll still have a few meals out here.